Okay, so a couple of things about the previous video. One, when I brought up the ports in the underside compartment and said that the sword doesn't fit in it, probably a bit over a dozen people told me, how do you not realize that there's a peg in the sword that lets it fit those ports? I did realize. There's a problem with that. The peg is too far down the handle and the port isn't far enough up the box, so when you plug it in, the tip of the sword hangs over the edge of the box. It almost fits at a diagonal, but it still doesn't. So no, I did not make a mistake. The ports are useless and the sword does not fit in the box. Two, and much more bizarrely, it turns out the black smog effects are actually clear blue fire effects that have been painted with a gloss black. I know because I stripped off the paint in a very stupid way. I used painter's solvent, which ripped the paint off in literally less than a second, but it did affect the plastic underneath. The first one we did bonded with the paper towel we were using to wipe it off, and the second one we tried to go slow on, but we ended up taking too much time on it and it messed up the finish on the plastic. I think had I just dunked it in the painter's solvent and wiped it off immediately with an actual towel, it might have worked better. We repaired some of the damage by applying a clear nail polish, but if you want to take the paint off of these effects, I suggest you use something less abrasive than painter's solvent. And yeah, that's right, Hasbro went to extra effort to ruin the blast effects for no explicable reason. Even with the finish damage, these are so much better blue than they were in the nonsensical black. I mean, what even the hell were they thinking? Since when has smoke ever been shiny, reflective black? Why? Why, Hasbro? Anyways, as for this video, after a great deal of hunting, I was finally able to find the Worlds Collide box. And since that has 4 figures in it, 2 relatively large and 2 smaller figures, I figured I'd make 2 videos out of it by reviewing one of each per episode. First up, Fangrian Bumblebee. I did not intend to talk about Bumblebee again so soon after making my What's the Best on him. Had I known this was going to happen, I would have probably held off making that video. That way, people couldn't complain at me that I'm crazy for having him in there, even though Cliffjumper is a retool of the masterpiece Bumblebee. He just is, there's no fighting the tide on this, it's all the same engineering with about 3 tweaks. Sure, not 1 inch of the sculpting is the same, but that doesn't stop it from being a retool. They just retooled everything. Every tool was altered for the new version. It is a very heavy retool, but it is still a retool. Anyways, oh my god, I did not think it was possible that I could dislike the Cliffjumper mold more! How did life find a way? Ignoring the fact that this is quite possibly one of the laziest retools of all time, literally just being the exact same figure in a new color with a head off of a different already existing figure, why does this feel like it's made of the garbage they scraped off the tool room floor? It feels so shitty, it's impossible to explain. Like, how are you supposed to understand without touching these yourself? They feel so insubstantial. It gives off the mental illusion that they are much lighter than their original counterparts. I put all of these on a scale, well, except for Fangry because he's a unique mold, and I was honestly shocked to find that each one weighed exactly the same as their Kingdom and Earthrise counterparts. They feel so chintzy in hand, it tricks you into thinking that they are like half the weight they should be. But no, apparently these are the exact same as normal. That legitimately shocks me. I did not think it was possible that these could weigh even 2/3 as much. And Bumblebee here's probably got the worst of it. I can constantly feel his plastics flexing under my grip. Say what you want about the Earthrise Cliffjumper, I know I do all the time, but that thing is at least built to last. I have beaten the crap out of that figure time and again, and for the most part it has stood up to the abuse, though it has lost a lot of paint in doing so, and that's always an annoying little bit of revenge he gets on me because it scuffs up the light box and it is real damn hard to clean that crap off. But this I am not comfortable abusing because it feels like anything too much and it will very rapidly start breaking off limbs. This is some garbage tier shit, dude. And what can I even say about this thing's look? It's so boring. It's exactly the Cliffjumper again, in yellow with a new head. I guess this actually has an Autobot symbol in robot mode, and that's about all that's different. The yellow they used for this thing is crap, too. I can give the face some credit, though. Even if it is just a direct copy off the one on the Netflix version, this has some serious character to it. It's a reinterpretation, but one that I kind of like a lot. It's definitely got the spirit of the character, and the paint is no joke. The silver face is much nicer than most, and the eyes positively gleam. Most figures with painted eyes tend to use some kind of matte color for them, but this I think is using the teal off of the Nemesis Primal, and boy, that was a top tier choice. It's shiny and reflective like chrome, it's so good. Too bad that's the only really nice thing I have to say about this figure. It has pretty eyes. What am I, some kind of cheap pickup artist? Also, why is this a Bumblebee head at all? Why won't you assholes just give us Bumblejumper? We've had like 3 opportunities to get one, and each time it would make more sense than the last, and they keep not doing it. This is like the weird Out There box set, and still no Bumblejumper. It's like they are trying to taunt us. Was this seriously only a Bumblebee because it's the stupid buzzworthy line and every box must contain at least one Bumblebee? Oh my god, that's the literal reason, isn't it? Anyways, if possible, I may have to steal this head and stick it on my Space Bumblebee. Then we have Fangry. You know, I thought for sure Earthrise Snapdragon was going to be the last unreleased Titans Return figure that was just dropped into a later line we'd ever get. But now, I want to say it's this thing. But who knows at this point? Maybe there's another that they are secretly waiting to drop on us. This is a retool of the Titans Return Twinferno, and it's not a good one. Actually, it's apparently a retool of the Grotesque, who in turn is a retool of the Twinferno. So there's like 3 layers of suck going on here. Of the figures in the box, this one probably has the worst tolerances in all of his joints, and that's saying something. This thing feels like trash that's barely holding together with scotch tape. And its deco is probably the worst out of the whole box too. This thing, unlike the rest, is mostly unpainted, and what is there is weird, like the 2 dots on his knees that are a color found nowhere else on any of the figures. Or the stat readout that has no stats to read out. And then there's his face, which is painted in a shitty porous green. The sculpt itself has some good qualities, but the giant head hanging off the back is not one of them. And the feet are as goofy as they ever were on the Twinferno. I kind of like it, but kind of not. The head is a fairly typical Titan Master head, though perhaps a bit more cohesive than normal. Not necessarily in the color, but the overall shape. I can't say that I'm particularly familiar with Fangry, but this seems like it should be about as accurate as I could expect. Actually, because I'm so unfamiliar with him, I looked into it and was very disappointed because 1, he apparently just hasn't really been in anything outside of a few comic appearances, the only one of which I know him from being the IDW, where he had a minor role in like 1 issue, vindictively murdering Tailgate, so I guess that's why I don't really know him. But 2, and more importantly, the head here is another lazy piece of shit move by Hasbro. This is literally just the Titans Return solo head that you could buy on its own. So on both these figures, the heads are just lazy swap jobs where they slapped an existing dome on an existing body. I think with this figure in particular, they treated the headmaster as the accessory because he doesn't really come with any weapon of his own or anything. And I will give them a weird bit of credit that not only does the head have better tolerances than any other headmaster I have, but it also has better tolerances than the main body of the figure itself. As for the Bumblebee, he comes with Cliffjumper's bazooka in 100% painted green, because why? It's not even the same shade as Fangry's face, it's a completely new set of green paint for no explicable reason. I'm sure there's some stupid deep-cut reason as to why this is green, but you know what? I'm much deeper into the fandom than most people, and I don't know it, so I have to assume that basically everyone who gets this thing is going to be confused by it. Poseability. Bumblebee has above average range on the head and significantly more than its mold mate Cliffjumper. The very loose shoulders get pretty high and can be cheated. Elbows that might be slightly over a 90, but that may just be my eyes playing tricks on me. Incredibly loose back crunch. Because of the blast effect peg, only 1 leg can kick forward all the way. Side and back are fine though on both legs. Insanely tight knee joints that actually look as bad as they feel and I worry will break soon. Monster ankle pivot and no toe up or down. As for Fangry, once again, this is really goddamn lazy. This is a Titans Return figure full stop. Unlike with the 8-face and the Snapdragon, they did not bother updating this at all. Titans Return head, slightly less than 90 shoulders, cheating like normal. 90-degree elbows, inwards bending wrists. Uselessly loose hips with a monoskirt. Kicks most of the way forward and all of the way back into the side. Ultra uselessly loose knees that bend a good bit more than a 90. Ultra uselessly loose ankles that only bend out because of the transformation, and rotation at the foot. Yeah, neither of these poses particularly well, but Fangry is especially bad, easily having the worst limb tolerances in the whole set, while the Bumblebee runs a respectable second, with in general worse materials. Bumblebee isn't living up to the standard of today. Fangry isn't even living up to the standards of the past. As for the transformation, neither of these does a good job either. I've listed my problems with the Bumblebee ad nauseum before, but I will say that it was not until this very day when I finally realized that you can do this to the hood of his alt mode. And I just find this endlessly entertaining. As for Fangry's transformation, this sucks. For starters, Headmaster. Ew. But then he's got this weird door in front of his Headmaster compartment, and there's no reason it's not just part of the existing door, considering they both have to be opened to use it, and they can both be opened by just pulling on the lower door. Also, it's weirdly specific how the Headmaster has to sit in the torso cockpit. And then his arms do next to nothing, and the legs do the frustrating and unsatisfying Twinferno tail transformation, except it's worse here because of the tolerances. Then you flip down the head, and were it not for how annoying the tail is to peg in, you'll have finished Baby's first transformation. Bumblebee car modes suck. It's just bad yellow version of Cliffjumper. Would be fine for a Bumblejumper if yellow weren't so crappy, but as a Bumblebee, this is wrong. And I don't know what this indent in it is, or why it's on both versions of the figure, but for some reason they were deemed important and left on both. And hey look, Fangry finally gets a decent mode. With the worst functioning part of the figure, the legs, being eradicated from this form by converting them into the tail, this is essentially left with a better set of bad tolerances. And the weird vampire werewolf is oddly endearing. I love the oversized mouth, it looks very cartoony. Sad this was never in a cartoon. The beast legs also have pretty weak tolerances and really only have forward and backwards rotation plus knee bends, but they are better than the normal ones, and the new head has an opening mouth but no rotation. Outside of that, the posing on this figure really hasn't changed. So yeah, these are some low quality crap. I can't believe Hasbro put out an official product that feels this chintzy in this day and age. Neither of these things are a reason to buy this box set. They are both made of what feels like literal trash, and while Bumblebee isn't bringing anything new to the table, the Fangry is so far behind the times he has a flip phone. Somehow that joke is only for kids, and yet kids won't get it. It is a paradox. These suck, don't buy, later! And that's not half of what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.